Stop spending money on expensive supplements and aggressive cancer treatments before you hear this, because a leading cancer researcher has revealed something that could completely change how you understand this disease. Something most people would never expect, and it's already sitting right in your kitchen. For more than 30 years, I have focused my work on how everyday food choices can influence the body at a biological level, how they can turn certain genes on and off, support the repair of damaged DNA, and even restrict the blood supply that abnormal cells depend on to grow. In simple terms, how food can shape the environment where disease either develops or is prevented. Today, I want to walk you through 6 of the most powerful foods supported by real scientific research, peer-reviewed studies that show measurable effects on cancer-related processes in the human body. I've ranked them from the least to the most impactful. So it's important you stay until the end, because the final one is something many people have been told to avoid for most of their lives. And yet, modern research is telling a very different story. Before we begin, I want to share a study that genuinely changed how I look at nutrition. Researchers at Harvard Medical School followed more than 7,200 patients over a 12-year period. What they found was striking. Specific compounds found in everyday foods were linked to a reduction in cancer recurrence rates of up to 52%. Not in animals, not in lab simulations, but in real human lives over a long period of time. That number is not small. It suggests that what we eat consistently may influence outcomes in a far more meaningful way than most people realize. And here's something even more interesting. The number one food on this list is something you've likely been warned about your entire life. For decades, many doctors and nutrition guidelines have told older adults to limit it. But the most recent data is now challenging that advice in a major way, and we'll get to that later. But first, I want to ask you something directly. Take a moment and write your age in the comments. Are you in your 60s, 70s, or 80s? And if cancer has ever touched your life, either personally or through someone close to you, feel free to share that as well. I read every single comment, and many of the topics I cover come directly from those conversations. Your experience matters more than you might think. Now let's begin with a list. 6 foods, moving from the well-known to the truly surprising. Starting at number 6. Number 6 is green tea. And even if you think you already know about it, the research behind it, especially in relation to aging bodies, is far more detailed than most people realize. A long-term study from Kyoto University followed 820 adults over the age of 65 for 8 years. The results showed that those who consumed 3 or more cups of green tea daily had a 41% lower risk of developing certain DNA mutations associated with early cancer development. That's a significant difference, especially in older populations where DNA repair naturally becomes less efficient. To understand why this matters, we need to look at what happens inside the body as we age. Every day, your cells experience tiny amounts of damage from normal life, breathing, digestion, environmental exposure, and even stress. When you're younger, your body repairs this damage quickly and efficiently. But after around age 70, that repair system slows down considerably. Scientists estimate it can drop by as much as 40%, meaning small DNA errors are more likely to accumulate over time. And those small errors are often where disease processes begin. Green tea contains a powerful compound called EGCG, or epigallocatechin gallate. Think of it as a biological signal that supports the body's internal repair systems. One of the key pathways it influences is known as the BRCA pathway, which is involved in maintaining DNA stability. By supporting this pathway, EGCG helps keep certain repair mechanisms active even as the body naturally ages and slows down. To get the most benefit, the preparation method actually matters. The ideal temperature is around 175 degrees Fahrenheit, not boiling. Boiling water can reduce the active compounds by up to 30%, which most people don't realize. Let the water cool slightly before brewing. There's also an interesting interaction that improves its effectiveness. When you add a small amount of lemon juice, the vitamin C significantly increases the absorption of EGCG in the digestive system by as much as 13 times in some observations. That means a simple addition of lemon can dramatically change how much of the beneficial compound your body actually uses. And if green tea acts as a kind of internal support for DNA repair, the next food works in a completely different but equally important way. It supports the energy systems inside your cells, which we'll explore next in number five. Number five is extra virgin olive oil. And while most people think of it as just a cooking ingredient or salad dressing, its role inside the body goes much deeper, especially when it comes to how cells produce energy and protect themselves over time. As we age, something important starts to change inside the body at a microscopic level. Your mitochondria, which are the tiny structures inside every cell responsible for producing energy, begin to lose efficiency. You can think of them like a city's power stations. When you're young, everything runs smoothly and energy flows consistently throughout the system. But as you enter your late 60s and 70s, some of those power stations start to weaken or shut down, and the entire system becomes less stable. When mitochondria become less efficient, they also produce more waste byproducts, specifically reactive oxygen species. These are unstable molecules that can damage DNA and surrounding cellular structures if they build up over time. In simple terms, they create internal stress that the body has to constantly manage. Extra virgin olive oil contains a compound called oleocanthal, which plays a protective role inside this environment. Instead of acting like a general antioxidant, it behaves more like a targeted cleaner, helping reduce the buildup of these damaging byproducts before they can interfere with cellular function. It also contains squalene, a naturally occurring compound that has been studied for its role in limiting the formation of new blood vessels that abnormal cell clusters can sometimes use to grow and expand. Another important point is how the oil is used. Quality and storage make a real difference here. Cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil stored in dark glass bottles retains its beneficial compounds far better than oils exposed to heat, air, or light. In fact, exposure to light alone can degrade key components by up to 40% over time, which is something most people are never told when they buy it from a store shelf. To get the full benefit, it's best used raw or at low temperatures. Drizzling it over vegetables, salads, or finished dishes preserves its active compounds far more effectively than high heat cooking, which can break down some of its beneficial structures. There's also a powerful interaction worth noting. When olive oil is paired with tomatoes, something interesting happens in terms of nutrient absorption. Tomatoes contain a compound called lycopene, which is fat soluble, meaning your body struggles to absorb it efficiently on its own. But when combined with healthy fats like olive oil, absorption can increase dramatically by several 100% in some studies. That means the pairing of these two simple foods creates a far stronger effect than either one alone. So while olive oil supports the internal balance of your cells, it also enhances how your body uses other protective nutrients from food. And that brings us to the next level where we move from supporting cellular energy to directly influencing gene activity itself, which leads us to number four. Number four is broccoli sprouts, and at first glance, they might not look like anything special. They're small, simple, and often overlooked in favor of more familiar vegetables. But when you look at what they do inside the body, the science becomes surprisingly powerful. What makes broccoli sprouts so important is not just that they come from broccoli, but that they contain a dramatically higher concentration of a compound called sulforaphane compared to mature broccoli, up to 100 times more in some measurements. This single compound is where most of the biological impact comes from. Inside your cells, there is a kind of internal control system that regulates protection and repair functions. One of the most important parts of this system is known as the NRF2 pathway. You can think of it as a master switchboard that controls a wide network of defense mechanisms throughout the body. When it is active, it helps regulate detoxification processes, reduces inflammation signals, and supports the removal of damaged or abnormal cells. The key role of sulforaphane is that it helps activate this NRF2 pathway. In simple terms, it helps switch on the body's built-in defense systems more efficiently. Instead of targeting one single function, it influences hundreds of protective genes at the same time, which is why researchers pay so much attention to it. This becomes even more relevant with age. As people get older, the activity of the NRF2 system tends to decline. By the time individuals reach their mid 70s, some studies suggest that this activity can drop significantly, meaning the body's internal defense coordination becomes less responsive than it once was. That is where nutrient dense foods like broccoli sprouts become particularly interesting because they appear to help reactivate that system. One important detail is that preparation matters. Sulforaphane is sensitive to heat, which means cooking broccoli sprouts can reduce their effectiveness. For this reason, they are typically consumed raw, often added directly to meals such as salads or sandwiches, after growing them at home or buying them fresh. There is also an important synergy effect that has been observed in research. When broccoli sprouts are combined with compounds found in mustard seeds, the activation of sulforaphane becomes significantly stronger. Mustard contains an enzyme that helps convert precursors into the active form more efficiently in the digestive system, which increases the amount your body can actually use. What makes this especially interesting is how simple it is. We are not talking about complex medical interventions or rare substances, but everyday foods interacting in a way that changes how the body responds at a cellular level. And as we move forward in this list, the focus shifts from activating protective systems to strengthening the immune environment inside the body itself, which leads us to number 3. Number 3 is wild-caught salmon. And unlike many foods that act indirectly on the body, this one works in a more structural way, supporting the very stability of your DNA over time through a process most people have never heard of in detail, telomere protection. To understand why this matters, you need to know what telomeres are. At the ends of your DNA strands, there are protective caps called telomeres. You can imagine them like the plastic tips on shoelaces. Their job is simple but essential. They prevent the DNA from fraying or becoming unstable every time a cell divides. The problem is that every time a cell copies itself, those telomeres get a little shorter. Over time, they gradually wear down. When they become too short, the cell can no longer function normally. It either stops dividing or, in some cases, begins to behave unpredictably. This process is closely linked with aging and is one of the key biological factors behind increased disease risk later in life. This is where wild-caught salmon becomes important. It is rich in omega-3 fatty acids, particularly EPA and DHA, which have been shown in long-term human studies to slow the rate of telomere shortening. In a large study published in a major medical journal following patients with cardiovascular conditions, higher omega-3 intake was associated with significantly slower biological aging at the cellular level. The mechanism behind this is largely tied to inflammation. Chronic inflammation acts like constant low-grade damage in the body, accelerating the breakdown of telomeres over time. You can think of it like sandpaper continuously rubbing against those protective DNA caps. Omega-3 fatty acids help reduce that inflammatory pressure, essentially softening that constant wear and tear. But salmon offers more than just omega-3s. It also contains a powerful pigment called astaxanthin, which gives the fish its pink color. This compound is considered one of the most potent antioxidants found in nature. It helps neutralize oxidative stress inside cells, reducing the overall burden that contributes to DNA damage. When choosing salmon, the distinction between wild-caught and farmed is important. Wild salmon typically contains higher levels of omega-3s and a more natural nutrient profile due to its diet and living conditions. Farmed salmon, on the other hand, often has a different fatty acid balance that is less beneficial in comparison. To maximize its effects, it is generally recommended to consume salmon a few times per week, ideally prepared in a way that preserves its nutrient content without excessive processing or high heat degradation. Keeping the skin on can also be beneficial as it contains a concentrated amount of astaxanthin. There is also a helpful nutritional pairing worth mentioning. When salmon is eaten with foods like walnuts, the combination of marine and plant-based omega-3s creates a more sustained anti-inflammatory effect in the body. It's a simple pairing, but one that works on multiple biological pathways at once. Now, As powerful as salmon is for maintaining cellular stability and slowing internal aging processes, the next food moves beyond individual cell protection and begins influencing the body's entire immune ecosystem. And that brings us to number two. Number two is fermented foods, specifically kimchi, sauerkraut, and kefir. And what makes this category so powerful is that it doesn't just affect one part of the body, it influences one of the most complex systems you have, your gut microbiome, which in turn shapes your immune defense, inflammation levels, and how your body responds to abnormal cells. To understand this properly, you need to zoom out and look at what's actually inside your digestive system. Your gut contains tens of trillions of bacteria, far more microbial cells than human cells in your body. These are not passive organisms. They actively communicate with your immune system every day, helping regulate how your body identifies and responds to potential threats. One of their most important roles is something called immunosurveillance. This is your body's internal monitoring system that constantly scans for damaged or abnormal cells and eliminates them before they can develop into something more serious. You can think of it like a security network that never shuts off. The problem is that this system changes with age. As people get older, gut diversity naturally declines. Research shows that after around age 70, microbial diversity can drop significantly, in some cases by over 40%. This means fewer beneficial bacterial strains are present to support immune signaling, which weakens the body's ability to maintain this constant surveillance. Fermented foods help reverse part of this decline. They introduce live beneficial bacteria into the gut and also support the growth of existing healthy strains. This improves microbial diversity and helps restore balance in the digestive environment. But the impact goes further than just adding bacteria. Fermented foods also produce compounds called short-chain fatty acids, especially one known as butyrate. This molecule plays a key role in maintaining the health of the colon lining. It also supports processes that encourage the removal of damaged cells through natural programmed cell death, a mechanism the body uses to prevent abnormal growth. Large human studies have shown that diets rich in fermented foods are associated with measurable reductions in inflammatory markers in the body. This matters because chronic inflammation is one of the key conditions that can weaken immune efficiency over time. There is also an important real-world example that highlights this effect. Patients who incorporate small daily servings of fermented foods, such as a few spoonfuls of sauerkraut or a glass of kefir, often show improvements in digestive balance and immune-related markers over time when combined with an overall healthy diet. However, there's one key detail many people miss. Fermented foods work best when paired with prebiotic fiber. Prebiotics, found in foods like garlic and leeks, act as food for beneficial bacteria. Without them, probiotics have less support to establish themselves in the gut. With them, the bacteria are more likely to survive, multiply, and create a stable environment. So, in simple terms, fermented foods introduce the beneficial microbes, while prebiotic foods help them thrive and stay active. And now we reach the final food on the list, the one that challenges long-standing beliefs about nutrition more than any of the others. A food many people have been told to limit for decades, yet recent large-scale research is telling a very different story.